Hi, my name is Torsten Krause. I'm Associate Professor at the Lund University Center for Sustainability Studies. I'm here at the IUFRO Congress in Stockholm. And we just organized a session this morning on wildlife and defaunation in tropical forests, or on forest areas in general, because we want to bring wildlife back into the forest debate, into the forest science, because we feel it's been kind of left out quite a lot in general debates. When we think about forests, we think about trees, but we forget that under these tree canopies we have many species living, diverse ecosystems that rely on species, and healthy forest ecosystems rely on different species of mammals and birds and reptiles, amphibians, in order to thrive. But we also should bring back the people, because without people who are actively managing and using forest resources, not just the trees but also the wildlife, we will not have healthy forests, or we will degrade forests over time.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Andrew Tilker. I'm Species Conservation Coordinator at the NGO Rewild, and exactly, Torsten got it exactly right. When we're thinking about forest ecosystems, we need to think not just about the trees, but also the wildlife that's living in those ecosystems, because ultimately healthy wildlife communities are needed to have healthy forest ecosystems. Right, so a common question that I get asked is, why do we need wildlife to have healthy forest ecosystems? And the short answer is that wildlife interacts in these ecosystems in very complex ways that ultimately makes these ecosystems what they are as we see them today. So, for example, large herbivores like deer or tapir will consume seeds and actually pass those seeds through their body and deposit those seeds in other parts of the forest. And just that process alone contributes to having healthy forest stands across basically everywhere in the world. So that's just one example of how animals actively engage in keeping forests healthy and as we see them today.
So from the session today, what we take away is that there is a lot of more work needed in understanding to what extent people use and rely on wild species in tropical forests, but also in other types of forest ecosystems across the world. We need to understand more about the ecological interactions between different species and what happens to forest ecosystems, tree diversity, for example, soil carbon content, over time, with or without the presence of certain species. And we need to do and invest more research, and particularly money, into getting these studies done across across sites and across a larger spatial and temporal timeline.
Yeah, agree. And I think we also need to take that research and make sure that it's integrated into policy at the appropriate levels, because science in this context really needs to be driving the policy changes so that we see wildlife being actually valued in the way that it should be when we're thinking about forest ecosystems as holistic socio-ecological systems.
In our research in the future, we continue to work in Colombia for most part. We have a project that is still running for 2 years, funded by FOMES, the Swedish Agency for Development Research. So we will continue to work in different communities, in 2 different sites in the Colombian Amazon, where we are looking at traditional knowledge, traditional ways of hunting and interacting with wildlife and using wildlife, and to what extent traditional knowledge can actually help us to develop more sustainable systems of natural resource management in these particular sites, and then upscaling that over a larger area to other sites in the Amazon, but potentially also other sites across the world.
Yeah, and my work spans global regions. But one area that I'm really interested in and excited about is looking at how animal communities actually impact carbon storage in different ecosystems. So we can look at what happens when those animals are removed from forest ecosystems and how that impacts carbon storage in a negative way. But we can also look at what happens when we rewild and reintroduce species into these ecosystems. And hopefully over time, the science will show that animals within ecosystems are an integral part of this wider discussion around how forest ecosystems are part of nature-based solutions.